All right, and I'm going to welcome everybody to the January 13th Communications Committee call. So thank you for joining in today. We actually just had an off-camera discussion that our committee is a little bit low today, so we're going to start with a couple of housekeeping items on the agenda, and then hopefully people will be able to join us for the presentation that Emily Harris with the Iowa After School Alliance is going to provide to us today. So the first kind of housekeeping item that I would point out is, and thank you, Elena, for being on as our chair today, but I'm just going to kind of jump in here if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
It's that A+ After School Award. So this is an award that the Alliance rolled out. Gosh, Emily, what was that? Maybe a couple of months ago, I think is when we kind of started this.
Yeah, I think the first one was in November.
Yeah, and it's really just a nice way for out of school time programs and sites to recognize the great work that your people with boots on the ground are doing. You can nominate anybody connected to your program. So it could be an administrator, a principal, a direct service worker. It could be a support staff person. You know, if you have that a custodian who just gets in there every day and does great stuff with the kids, absolutely feel free to nominate that person using the form. So we do have in our Iowa After School Alliance newsletter, we do have a link to that A+ After School Award that you can make that nomination. Emily, do you happen to have the direct link that maybe we can drop into the chat that I can cut and paste into the notes, and or I'm sure, Emily, if people emailed you, you'd be willing to point them in the right direction. Is that true?
Yeah, so I'll drop that in the chat right after this. You can email me. That's eharris@sppg.com. But it's also on our social media. I usually boost this at least once a month. So if you go to the Iowa After School Facebook page, it should be there somewhere as well.
Great. So I actually just talked about this at our Family Engagement Committee. So look at that. I'm just going to pop that right in there like that. So, okay. The second reminder, Elena, I'll just do this real quick and then I'll turn it over to you. We are reminding our entire 21st Century Network through our committee work that your local evaluation document, which was due last November, and some of you received extensions to do those reports. So that's no problem. If you had an extension, if you needed additional extension, you just simply need to reach out to Vic to be able to talk through what that process looks like. But we're reminding people today and throughout this month on our committee calls that you are to post the evaluation document on your school or site's website, and you are required to provide that URL to Vic. Now, if you've submitted your document already to Vic, there is a place in there where it asks you to list that URL. It's a good idea, though, to send an email to Vic and or myself to be able to have that URL documented so that we can be sure that we're compliant where that's concerned. So, Vic, feel free to unmute and add anything else to that particular discussion.
Well, I just got something from the feds this week about requirements for transparency for federal grants. And, this is just a small thing. And we are pretty clear, and we've been clear for many years on this. So make sure that you've got your links up to date, that, if somebody clicks on it, it's actually going to go somewhere. And if you've had this grant for a couple of years, you should have more than one evaluation on there.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
Thank you. Okay, so Elena, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and you can guide the rest of the agenda then, since I'm done with my reminders now. So thank you.
Perfect. Am I just so I guess with who we've got on the call, I'm not sure how much more in depth we're going to get on a couple of these items that we talked about last month. Like the Telegram app, I know that we wanted people to download and play around with, see if we find some application in it for us to share some resources across the state. But of people who might have done that, it's probably just me and Chuck right now. So Chuck, have you by chance downloaded that app or used it on your computer or anything like that? Have you seen the Telegram app at all? I think he's muted. I'm not sure if he's able to jump in on that, which is okay too. So I just have that, and then I think really just any updates statewide of anyone's district, what's going on, what's different with COVID, any transitions that have happened, which again, I don't want to make Chuck be my token person who has to answer or give any input. I know for us in Council Bluffs, we have come back all full time. And so our programs are kind of coming into our second wave of our second semester starting up with all of our kids, which is nice to get some of that normalcy back, even though there's still a lot of differences of how we're serving kids and wearing masks and social distancing. But I know that I think our kids have really appreciated getting back into their program. So that's really the only update we have. By now, we've kind of figured out our kinks and how to stay in touch with our families and students through the process. But I don't know how much more I've got for us to chat through today without a little more collaborative talking. And since some people couldn't make it today, it just might not be the date for that.
Elena, we actually did have Barb from Oline join the call too. So
Okay, there we go. I'm using my phone because my computer won't match up to my headphones, so I use my phone. So I've been switching back and forth to see if anyone's on. But
yeah,
before
absolutely.
Chris, topic wise though, Crystal, that's really all we have outside of that presentation though, right? It's just kind of our overview and Telegram outside of what you've already touched on. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
So Emily's kind of prepared a presentation for us today to talk about the social media aspects of this. So maybe let's go ahead and have her do the presentation, and then we can come back. And if anybody has program highlights, we can certainly bring those to the attention of everybody in the group. So,
awesome.
So I'm going to stop share on my screen, Emily.
Yeah.
And I believe you should be able to share yours.
Yes. Let me pull this up. Okay. So we have discussed at a couple meetings now, not in great detail, the idea, I should present this. Oh my gosh, how embarrassing. That of social media champions. I've been working on, I've been with the IAA since February of last year. And since then, I've been working on a lot of the communications. And I brought some knowledge around social media with that. And so we've really been trying to build our social media so that we can have a better connection, just communications wise, but also just to grow the network because it's an organic way of collecting more folks along the way. So far, by doing analytics and trying some different social media tactics and different content, I've really identified what it is that our followers like and what people are interacting the most with. Unfortunately, that content isn't reaching as many people as it could based on our engagement and our analytics. And so I kind of been throwing around this idea of these social media champions who are designated folks who will interact and engage with our content. And then in this presentation, I'll get a little bit more into why that's important. But first and foremost, what I use the IAA and 21st Century social media, which is just the IAA Facebook page. We also have a Twitter, but right now I'd like to focus on the Facebook page because that seems to be where we capture the most people. But we use this right now for reaching new networks and community members, like I stated, to keep growing the network and keep people engaged and interested in the programs that we offer. And then sharing information and opportunities with the network. This is a lot quicker way for me to share opportunities that might come to us last minute because I don't have to get it to a whole email serve. I can just like blast it on social media and everybody's got it. So routinely we get things that will come in and the due date is like 3 days out from when someone sends that to me. But we have a structured newsletter where most of that stuff would go. And by the time I could put it in the newsletter and get it out to everybody, it just would be too late. So social media serves like a good purpose for that, because we have a lot of great stuff that comes through that unfortunately we just don't have time to promote. Also to keep a living log of activities. This is great for going back to say we did this, and this year. And that builds into this next piece of program building. It shows our impact to policymakers, investors, donors, funders, et cetera. Because we're reaching more people than what just would be the direct workers and programs that participate with us. And it shows them that this is the impact that after school has across the state. And here's how you can help that by creating policy that makes it easier, by investing more in us. And that's a really great way of reaching those community members outside of who we just genuinely talk to on a day-to-day. But most importantly, and this is the thing that gets the most engagement on Facebook, and I love doing these posts, is the recognition, and praise of programs that are doing great things across the state. And that's kind of why we also implemented that A+ After School Award, because we could sing the praises of our programs. And I think that this is a great way that people get really engaged and interested in it. And it's more impactful that we're reaching more people to say X program and Dubuque is doing a great job doing X, Y, and Z. So that's really kind of to build that community piece too around not just reaching new people, but the community amongst you guys, so that you know what your peers are doing, even if they're not in the same groups that you usually talk to. So that brings us to what our social media is currently looking like right now. Our Facebook page has a very wide following. We have 870 plus followers as of last night. And our followers are people who actively seek out our information and they want to stay updated with what we're doing. Because there's two different things. There's a like and then there's a follow. So if you like the page, it doesn't necessarily set you up to follow the page, which means that you won't see any of the new content. But if you specifically like and follow the page, then you are set up to get the content. We have more follows than we do likes. So that alerts me that most of our likes also, or if not all of them, also follow the page, with a couple of other people also just following the page for information as well. Unfortunately, our average post has a reach of 50 to 60 people. That means that our posts only reach about 6% of our followers. And that means that it's shown up on their timeline and they've at least scrolled past it. That doesn't track any analytics on how long they looked at it to see if they even read it or if they just kind of flicked by it. That on that end, I'm working on that by trying to be more graphically engaging with photos, videos, etc., so that when you're scrolling, it at least catches your eye and it's not just something that people are flicking by. Our posts average about 3 engagements, and engagements on Facebook consist of the comments, likes, and shares. And a majority of them don't receive any engagements at all. So we don't even have one person like anything. Recently, we've seen a slight uptick in who's liking our stuff, but we're hitting this rut, this growth rut where it's the same 5 people. So because those 5 people are interacting with our content, they're getting it more frequently, which means they'll continue to like, but it's only giving it to the same group of people outside of them because they share the same network, being the same 5 people, if that makes sense. And us not receiving a lot of engagement and not receiving a lot of reach on what we're posting is most likely due to not having very many followers who engage with our content, which means it's not pushed out to a larger network to reach more people. So improving the reach of our page, how do we do that? We can increase the usual amount of interactions on our posts. Facebook's algorithm since 2018 places precedent on showing content that is seen as being tailored or personal to who's ever receiving the content. And when it comes from, so the algorithm then obviously says things that are coming from an individual. Like if you had a Facebook page, like my specific Facebook page for myself will receive more interaction and more boost because it's an individual and it's a personal tailored message. So then you're kind of capped already from the start being a business group where it doesn't recognize you already as having individual, personal, or tailored content. But you can increase the likelihood of that algorithm recognizing you as personal or tailored by interacting with the content. And that's called meaningful engagement. So that means that the algorithm's going to recognize this not as spam, not as something that people don't care about, but as something that people do want to see and that is valuable to that network. So as I alluded to at the beginning, the best way to handle this is to designate a team of social media champions, or just a couple of people who go through and interact with our content every time that we post. And it's pretty easy to do that. You don't have to do it. There's no time frame where it's like you have to have X amount of engagements within an hour. As long as our stuff is being interacted with, that's all we need. And I usually tend to post at peak times, which is 2 to 3 p.m. when most people are taking a break during the day to scroll social media, and also at 5 p.m. right when people end and they kind of check social media for fun. So here's some really good examples of what this meaningful engagement. I was so proud that this worked. I had this planned out for like 2 months. I was going to post the same thing so I could show what the analytics were like. But this is a prime example of what meaningful engagement can do for posts. So both of these posts are content on the A+ after school, promoting that so people will fill out the form. The first one with the one that's blue with looks like lined paper and it says input requested, that had no engagements and it reached 52 people in our network. So out of the 870 people who actively seek out our information, only 52 people saw it. Just yesterday, or I guess this would have been Monday by the time I took this screenshot, I posted the A+ after school stuff again with a different graphic. And because we'd had those 5 or 6 people who are continually interacting with our content now that they're receiving it, only 2 people shared it, and it boosted us to almost 300 people seeing it from our network. So it had 1 like, and it had a total of 12 engagements, meaning that between those 2 shares, that 1 like, the rest of those were total organic clicks of this post, people wanting to read more. So just a little bit of interaction, whether it's a share or a like, boosted us almost, from 50 to 300. It's the same content too. So that was what I was excited about, because I was like, that's my controlled variable. And then what to do next on this. If you want to be a social media champion, or if we identify people who are social media champions, make sure that you're already following our Facebook page. We're always constantly getting a slight trickle of people in from the committees and other groups liking the Facebook page. So make sure that you're liking that. And like I said before, I'd rather focus on the growth of our Facebook page right now before we add Twitter in, because that's just a whole nother layer. So I plopped the link of Facebook, our Facebook page right there. It's facebook.com/Iowa After School Alliance. And then the best way to know when we post, since our algorithm doesn't show when I post, is to turn on post notifications. And I've done some kind of ugly screenshots here at the bottom to show you how to do that. But if you go and you visit our page, right below our banner photo that says like Iowa After School, and it has some little kiddos on it, there's that three dots button next to the search glass, and you click on that and you hit follow settings. And once you hit follow settings, it pops up this really large list of settings that you can choose from, and you'll go to notifications, and then where I've highlighted posts, and then you click on that. And once you get there, there's 3 different choices that you can make. I think it automatically designates you as highlights, and that's when you'll get notifications. Our page doesn't get highlights because we don't get enough interaction for it to be considered a highlighted post. So you want to switch that to standard. And then you'll get notified up to 5 times a day when I post, which if you're worried about me getting way too many notifications for this, it's not an issue at all. I post 3 times a week and it's only once a day. So at most you'd be getting once a day. But I think that's pretty much it on this idea of where our social media is at, how we can continue to grow it, because we have had some good organic growth, but we're just kind of in a rut. And what we can do to improve that. If you have any more questions, like I said earlier, you can email me, and that's eharris@sppg.com.
All right. Does anybody have immediate questions for Emily?
That's very impressive. I had no idea how some of that worked. Very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot to dig into unless that's something that you're specifically interested in. It's really dry content.
Yeah, thank you. So, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had also maybe talked about you doing a screen share this morning with the Telegram app to just kind of maybe show us step by step of how to do that in case people haven't downloaded it yet and they maybe still have some questions. Do you mind popping that up?
Yes. Do you want, so I have just the app, or did you want me to walk the people through how to download it?
What does the group need?
I think a visual tour of what it offers would be better right now.
Okay, let me get it loaded. It was taking a little while earlier.
Okay, great. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Emily's little coworker there was it was kind of vocal in the background. So Mr. Leon, when was he born, Emily?
He was born in May. He's actually 8 months today.
Oh,
Wow.
so sweet.
So Mr. Leon makes an appearance at several of our meetings. So I just, we've really come to kind of know his little babbling and stuff.
Very chatty kid, very chatty kid. Let me see where. Sorry guys. I don't know why it's being so slow today. Okay, got it. Cool. Cool. Okay. It was updating me with a bunch of new stuff. So let me check this out. Telegram. Okay, are you guys seeing the Telegram little bubble here? Good. Okay. So this is Telegram. Crystal, I might just send you a message. You don't have to pop it up. But when you log in, this is what it looks like. It already creates this for you based on like the information you input when you create an account. So you don't have to do anything to get to just the basic messaging. Just download and create an account. And so these are the different functions that we have with Telegram. We have group messaging, we have channel messaging, and then we have contacts, obviously. Groups will most likely make the most sense with this because we can group people by committee. We could do channels, but the channels would be specific to a topic, if that makes sense. So groups are more of like a general overview of how all these people are connected, and then channels are for one specific topic. So we would most likely just group everybody together based on your committee or based on whatever it is you need to share information about. But the basis of it is it serves exactly like any messenger app that's out there. You can talk individually with people. So I've talked with Crystal before, and you just type down here and you say, hey, Crystal, and it sends it to her like a text message. And then she receives it on her desktop, similar to how you would receive a text message just on your computer. And then we've also tested it with Vic. It'd be the same exact thing. And then there's also a group test here where we've talked with Brittany, Crystal, and I, and that would be the same thing. If I said, hey, Crystal, both Crystal and Brittany are going to get this message. So that would be like how you would talk with folks. You could have individual communications here, similar to text messaging. You could have group messages here, like I said, similar to group messages. That's why I liked Telegram, because it's very similar, if not the same, to any other messaging app. There's a lot of other messaging apps out there, but their rooms and the different chats kind of get messy. This to me presents itself exactly how you would text anybody, regardless of if you're an Apple user or an Android user, Samsung, whatever. So from there, once you create your account and we're all using this, everybody will just send me their information for me to start a group, which if I wanted to start a group here, I would say this is the test group. And then I would search members. But if I don't have a member, what I'll need from you guys is to create a member. I don't know why this isn't working right now. Okay. Must have changed since the last time I used it. But when I want to add a new contact, I'd have to go through add everybody, which is very simple. Why is it not pulling up? Sorry, guys. This app has been giving me some hard time. It's just your first, last name, and your phone number, which is all you use to create the account. You don't have to put in any other information about yourself. So it's pretty safe in that regard, but it's also one of the only apps that encrypts, has really good encryption. So this would all be safe communication. No one can really get into a group unless I allow them to and I add them. So this would be controlled on like who's in a group based on who sends me their credentials to be added to that group. Yeah, I think that's exactly what we want to use it for. The only other thing that I would say is that the other plus side to this being extremely user friendly, similar to any other messaging app that you've used, is that you can attach files, but this is the one and only, so I could like send that file to Crystal just by clicking the paperclip. It's one of the only messaging services that does not limit your file size. So it's very easy to send files. You should never have an issue sending files because there's no limit on what you can and cannot send. So that makes it easier for sharing that information for what we wanted to use this for, because you don't have to cut file sizes, compress files, or anything. You just kind of send it along to the group. I think that's pretty much it. Did anybody have any questions about Telegram?
No, I don't. I don't have any questions. I think it made sense. I like the format of it, so I'd be ready to give it a go.
Yeah, and I guess
So-
for recording purposes, sorry, Crystal, go ahead.
No, please go.
For recording purposes, I'll send the link to Crystal where you can download the Telegram app. And like I said, you just create an account using your name and your phone number. And then if you want to be added, just send me your name, your first and last name, and your phone number in an email, and I can add you as a personal contact. The next step for this then would be, Crystal, you and I determining like what groups need to be created. So that way I know where to put everybody and they're not just in individual chats with me.
Right. So I guess that's a question that I'd like to throw back to the committee. And this was what I was going to ask next was, do we feel as the communications committee for 21st Century, do we feel like we're in a place where we want to promote this network wide? And if so, what do we see that looking like?
When you say network wide, are you saying like one big mass group to start, or are you saying network wide as in outside of the, can you explain that? Sorry. What you're asking.
Yeah. So a little bit of a reminder regarding the history of this as to, and why we decided to maybe move forward with an app like this is kind of twofold. So the first and foremost was that people kind of had, and when I say people, what I mean is the 21st Century Network across the state of Iowa. So people kind of had this feeling or, maybe a mindset that if they were encountering a problem or a barrier or an obstacle, that they didn't necessarily want to reach out to Vic or ourselves at the Iowa After School Alliance because they were maybe a little bit nervous or worried that it could be punitive in nature, right? So even though, again, we know that Vic is the nicest guy in the world, and I hope that you think Emily and I are very nice people, I think there's maybe just a slight level of fear where like, well, if I'm having a problem and if I draw attention to myself, is that going to kind of target me for like an extra eye on my program type of thing? So that was kind of the first maybe discussion that we had. The second component that kind of came into play here was people's feedback that we were getting that they're really feeling disconnected from the 21st century overall. Because of COVID, we couldn't get together for Impact. We didn't get together for our summer or fall, we used to call them institutes. Now we're going to call them workshops, those types of things. So how could we maybe allow for a way for people to connect and be like, I want to network with people. I have this great idea, or this worked really well for me. I want to share it across the state, or I really need some help with this particular problem. And you would hop on Telegram, pose your question. It's going to pop up as a notification onto whoever's on Telegram, and they can be like, oh, absolutely, I tried this, click, 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 click. So that's kind of the thought behind that. So in terms of the group, I guess in my mind, I kind of see it as like one large group to begin with, right? One 21st century group to begin with. But then, we maybe even would want to consider in the future, or as it rolls out, if we're seeing a lot of people who maybe need some thoughts on, I don't know, we just talked about family engagement, and keeping families engaged during this whole COVID time, maybe we create a family engagement subgroup or something of that nature. In the past, we've had a couple, 3, 4, 5 sites that serve middle school or high school. Maybe we would even want to create a separate room for them to be able to bounce off some of those ideas versus the larger group where you might get somebody who's working with, K through 5 that, well, maybe you could tweak it to meet your middle school needs, but it might be better if it was coming from somebody who was really in the trenches every day doing that work. So does that kind of make sense?
Yes, that helped me. And that came to pretty much what I think I originally thought of with this, using this platform, was going to be that I think over time we might find groups that make sense based on, like you said, what age levels they work with, what their program flow is like, and just kind of that's going to happen individually and organically after you kind of get to know that. But and then I think it would help us be more collaborative without going through you, like you were saying, or having to reach to you guys and then get pinpointed elsewhere. So
right. So and again, I think the other thing to just kind of remember is that, we at the Alliance kind of have to be involved in this because we're the ones that are setting it up. But it's not like we're not going to be in everybody's business all the time, I guess that's what I would say.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. If it offers any more clarification too, it's actually ironic that you brought up the Family Engagement Committee, because that's where we started talking about this, because I remember something was brought up in Family Engagement where they said, well, if we wanted to do, like, how complicated is it going to get if we wanted to do an event and we need to talk to the communications committee about putting out the information about that event, or how we'd want to do that as a network. And so that would be like one way, if you guys requested, like, hey, could you pair me up with everybody in the Family Engagement Committee so that we can discuss this without being like a whole huge email listserv and everything, and keeping groups separated, that would work. And also, like Crystal said, that's exactly how it would function, is at first everybody would be in one big group, so that you could say, hey, has anybody had experience with X, Y, and Z? I have an issue with X, Y, and Z. What's a possible solution? And then people can get back to you that way. And you can also, once you guys are talking in that, you can like fray off into your own like one-on-one conversations from that as well. But just to echo what Crystal said, and this, another major purpose of this was so that you guys had some anonymity, not even gonna say it, some secrecy to your messaging between you guys, that I would have to be there to administer this, since we're administering it through this network or whatever. And I have to add everybody, and I'd have to be in all of the groups to manage that. But please know, I'm not spending my time during the day reading through the messages. Most of the time I have it actually just closed off unless I'm using it for a specific purpose. So at any point, this is pretty quiet. I'm not going to be waiting for you guys to talk about anything in the chat. So it would be 100% just you guys, unless you guys at Emily because you need technical assistance or you have a specific question for the Alliance.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it sounds exciting.
Yeah. So if I could make a quick suggestion, and I'm sorry, Chuck, were you getting ready to unmute and talk?
I was just going to say, I think it's a great idea as well. Yeah. I mean, my director comes to me all the time asking questions, and I'm like, ask Vic. So,
Yeah.
but we don't have that fear of Vic, and I'm sure there are others that do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have an idea that I guess I would kind of throw back to you guys then as the committee to roll out. Would one or all of you be willing to maybe type up just a paragraph, an introduction as to why we think this app would be valuable to the 21st Century Network? You can send it to Emily and I. We'll kind of add in the link information and what we need for them to set up an account, and maybe, do some tweaking for questions and whatnot, but then we can send it out to the entire network. However, I would also say we do have a 21st Century Directors meeting next Friday, the 22nd. And I do think that maybe what we would want to do is just add this to the agenda to bring the directors up to speed, make sure that they know that it's coming, because I ultimately would see it being sent to the entire network, not just the directors, if that makes sense. So does that sound like a good plan? Does anybody have any concerns about that?
I have one concern.
Okay.
And that is we make it clear that this is not required. A lot of the
Yeah.
stuff we do is required by federal statute. This is going to be, voluntary, and, it's going to benefit the users. So we're not going to be keeping track of how many people. Well, you guys can do that, but we're not going to be, like doing attendance for our communication meetings and our other committees. So as long as we make that clear, that sounds like a great idea.
All right. Any other thoughts from anybody else? So do I have a volunteer or a combination of volunteers to maybe put together that kind of introductory paragraph?
I can do that.
Okay. And Elena, by all purposes, if you want to shoot it over to Chuck and Barb and just say, what do you think? That's
Okay,
absolutely
yeah.
fine with
Okay.
Because we would want to talk about this with the directors, if I could get this by like maybe next Thursday, the 21st, that would be great.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to the agenda. Well, actually, yeah, that'll be fine. Let me pop this back up here. And forgive my kind of gibberish notes in here. I'll clean these up after the meetings. But Elena, I think we're actually down to program highlights if anybody else has anything to share.
Yeah, so I don't know, Chuck or Barb, if you guys have anything to update on what's going on in your programs right now, what's going well, what maybe any complications you're running into, or either way. Got anything to share?
This is Barb from Owine. I just want to say we started a virtual program for our online students, and I am just amazed at how well that's worked out, because maybe I was just so afraid or hesitant afraid, that's the right word. And the program's flowing, we're getting more people. We have a good system worked out with bags where the parents pick up all the supplies at a pickup point. So I'm amazed. I'm amazed at how it's fallen together.
That's awesome.
We also do
hear.
face-to-face, but we have an online school that parents could put their kids in because of COVID. So we are getting those families.
Great.
And this is Chuck in Burlington or in Fairfield. So yeah, we went out. We've been most of this school year been in a hybrid state. We had 3 weeks that we were virtual only, but during the hybrid time, we have been running the after school program face to face. But we also at the beginning of the year went out and got supplies and dropped them off at every child's house with activities. And we've kept up on sending home activities to do with those supplies and then replenish supplies so that on the off days that they're not at school, they have activities to do. And that's been going pretty well, I think.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Elena, again, the agenda was kind of short today because I knew Emily's presentation was coming, but if there's anything else that you would want to add or anything else that anybody else has.
I don't think so. I don't think I have anything unless anybody wants to chime in. There's something that's pressing or on your mind, but I think that that's some good coverage to move forward. And maybe get that app rolling before our next meeting.
All right. So just to kind of summarize our next steps. So Elena, you're going to take first stab at kind of putting together that opening paragraph, explaining the app. You'll shoot it over to Chuck and Barb. They'll provide their 2 cents. And then ultimately you'll get that to me by the 21st. We will share it out with the directors on the 22nd. And then unless there's like major concerns in some way, shape, or form, we'll plan on sending that out through an email to the entire 21st Century Network that last week of January. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
So our next meeting, and I'll complete these notes and get them posted on the website too, of course. So our next meeting is March 17th. It'll be at 11 a.m. Obviously, we'll do a check-in on where we're at with Telegram and enrollment and see how that's going. But by all means, if anybody has any other agenda items that you want the committee to work on or focus on, also considering our goals up here, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll get that onto the agenda. You can also, of course, reach out to Elena as your chair. Okay. All right, so I am going to stop recording.